As people join, welcome as well. We're really excited to be here as we talk about the 7-step framework to designing efficient law firm processes. So the kind of co-speaker today, Jordan, will actually share some insights into his process framework. And I want to share just a few ways you can really incorporate some of those using your practice management solution. So we'll actually talk about 3 different processes today. We'll talk about intake, we'll talk about workflows, especially as you're incorporating document management, and then we'll talk a little bit about billing as well, with the goal of hopefully you can take some of these insights back to your firm and incorporate them as well. A lot of good stuff to get into, but 2 quick housekeeping notes. First, we are recording this webinar, so feel free to take as many notes as you want, but know you'll get a copy of this in your inbox pretty soon. And then we also have kind of a Q&A. We're going to try and save some time here at the end. So if you have any questions kind of along the way, feel free to drop those in the Q&A, and we hopefully will have time to get to those. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get rolling. We're going to start with kind of just a quick introduction of our speakers. My name is Libby Luff, Strategic Partnerships Manager here at PracticePanther. That ultimately means I get the privilege of collaborating with state and local bars, with consultants and really great partners like Jordan here on really ways that we can help support, educate, and empower attorneys on ways that you can really efficiently and effectively manage your firm. So I come to you with about 15 years of experience in sales and marketing, and I love to turn those strategic challenges into those untapped opportunities. So today, Jordan is joining us. I'm excited to say he is a PracticePanther user. And he's going to be sharing some insights from his experiences. So Jordan, in addition to his role as the managing partner here at Driven Law, he also moonlights as a law firm consultant with a ton of experience in building processes and really understanding kind of the legal marketing. He regularly appears on podcasts, so do keep an eye out on your LinkedIn feed. And I'll let him kind of talk a little bit more about how he's becoming the lawyer with a life.
Well, thanks so much for that intro. What else is needed? Now, I also run a PI firm here in Orlando since 2015, and I joke with everybody, but also I'm dead serious. I opened the firm in 2015, but I don't think I was a good firm owner until somewhere between 2018 and 2019, because I lacked a ton of the stuff that we're talking about today: the system, the process, the idea of your ideal client, anything along those lines. So the biggest change for me was really switching from calling myself a lawyer to calling myself a business owner, and then a marketer, and then now moving into doing CEO consulting sessions where I help other lawyers get out of the day-to-day into that CEO role with systems, with processes, with delegation, with automation, etc. And so obviously, when Libby talked about this, I thought this was such a cool opportunity for us to share some of the stuff for free to help you guys build as much of the foundation as you can to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, and it's also good to know that those consulting services, so once you're done on the webinar and you feel like you need to kind of have a professional ear or somebody to kind of go over with, he's going to be a great resource for you. And then I just kind of quickly want to introduce PracticePanther. Anybody on the call who may not be super familiar with us, we're the all-in-one legal practice management software solution. We're kind of built for that solo and small firms, but we also are handling some of those medium firms really in all practice areas. We want to be 2 things for our customers. We want to be easy to use. Our goal is to be the most intuitive platform on the market. Your practice management should be pretty, to look at as soon as you log in, and it should be super easy to use. You're in it every day. You don't want to feel that frustration of trying to find things, organize things, and stuff like that. Another big thing for us is customization. Really depending upon your practice area and your size, you can customize a lot of different aspects within PracticePanther. And we do that through, seamless case management, whether you're on the go or you're just hanging out in the office. You can link those contacts, those matters, documents, invoicing, really kind of utilizing one source of truth. You can automate your processes. We're going to show that today through our workflows, where you kind of set those conditional tasks, those reminders, assign tasks, and kind of go from there. You can then incorporate some really cool modern communication within PracticePanther. You have the native e-signature options, as well as 2-way texting without ever leaving the platform. And then we can really help with that billing and payments with our Panther payments. We found from our customers who go digital, they're getting paid faster and they're collecting more. So we really want to make this easy on our customers moving forward. And so that kind of leads us into the discussion for today of, really let's kind of define what a law firm process is so everybody knows what we're talking about. We're going to talk about those top problems firms are regularly encountering when they're trying to create these systems and how they can build better processes. Then we're going to get to, I think, the reason we're all here today, the 7 steps to building the better systems and the best systems out there, and then implementing some of those into your practice management solution. And we're going to kind of wrap the conversation with that continuous enhancement. There's always a way that you can iterate and improve your processes and your workflows, and we can kind of talk about when to do that. And so I guess we're going to go ahead and jump right into the importance of law firm systems and processes. So first, processes at your firm is really the movement of work between steps as you're kind of going through a project. To create these processes, you really need to consider what steps are associated with managing your firm from start to finish. We'll look at, this will look quite a bit different, depending on your practice area, depending upon your size. But once you kind of put all of these in place, you want to write down every single step within your process. Defining a process, it will actually really help with with your staff. You're going to be contributing to the overall goals for your law firm and for your company. Specifically, processes help define really the law firm objectives. It can really promote standardization. It really defines roles and responsibilities, and it really sets deadlines for your team as well. So ultimately, it helps you decide who does what, by when, and in what order. And so we kind of briefly talked about, how processes can help achieve your law firm, your company goals. Wanted to provide a few examples here on this slide. If your goal is to really increase profits, with improving processes, you can handle more cases and you can really resolve these cases faster. And that'll help really with being consistent and achieving those consistent results, which really can improve then your overall client satisfaction, which might be another goal of your law firm. A more engaged client and staff will help you generate better outcomes, and it can also help amplify those cost savings. And in addition to those cost savings, really the time savings of using repeatable steps, incorporating automation, kind of as Jordan mentioned, utilizing your technology on where it can have the greatest impact.
And I think it's so funny because you'll notice later in this, when we pull some studies for like the specific benefit of certain things, we really tried to find one on the benefit of having systems and processes. There's none. And I think that's because it's so obvious how important they are because of all these things. But it was really funny to me that we couldn't really put a specific number on it the same way we can with some of the stuff about automation and bill collection and whatnot from there.
Absolutely. Well, I'll let you kind of take it from here then, Jordan, and talk about the ways you can improve those processes.
Sure. So here's where I want to start. I hope the following sentence is liberating to the 80 people that are joining us today. Your processes will never be perfect. I am giving you permission for that to be the case because that is the case. So please, please, please do not think I need the perfect process. We are constantly going to talk about progress, making them better and whatnot. But let's start with the most common problems when it comes to systems and processes. You'll see here, we've got our top 3. So the first one is having no processes. And like I said, 2015 law firm owner, not good until 2018. That's probably about when I started putting together serious processes. And I'll be honest, when it's just you, you don't need to spend a ton of time on this stuff. But the minute it comes time to outsource anything, to hire anybody, another lawyer, a law student, a legal assistant, whatever it is, if you don't have these processes, you have no idea if stuff is done, if it was done right, who's done it, and whatnot. So this is where I think the biggest problem is not having any consistent process written down. The next one, most common problem that we build off of is not following the process consistently. So there is a process written down and maybe half the office does it the right way, half of the office does it a certain way. Some people don't always enter it. And now you're spending that much more time to figure out where the issue is or get the data that somebody was supposed to enter to have something in the right place. So that's number 2. And then the third one, this is the one where it's kind of on us as the firm owner. So not enough training and education to the staff on the processes, not enough resources, that kind of stuff. So, a lot of firms I see moving from no process to getting it in place, but then their processes are 60 hours of work for somebody only working 40 hours. or they don't train anybody on it, or they don't do any follow-up. And so a lot of what we're talking in this thing is how you create the process, but how you make it better. Part of that's going to be communicating with the people actually doing the work so that you can get that figured out. So moving on to the next slide, when we talk about building that best process, because again, we're going to throw the word perfect out of this. We're talking about best. These are 6 questions that I want you to think about. You don't have to go through all of them for every process. Some of them will make more sense for certain systems and not for others, but this is kind of where I want to start this conversation. So what's the purpose of this process? Not just I want a demand letter at the end of it, but what's the reason behind that? Because I need that to move the case forward, because my clients seem to appreciate it, because it helps us make more money. Like the more you think about the purpose, the more you're going to be able to figure out if you're missing any steps. So what do we want to get out of this in terms of a physical document or in terms of a result? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing it now? Why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it at all? What does success look like for this? So we'll talk about that as one of the easiest ways to know when it's time to update a process. So if you are changing your intake system and success looks like increasing your close rate by 10% in 3 months, if you don't hit that number, you know it's a good time to go through and edit the process. Who's needed for this? So who at the office has to know this process, who's a part of this process, and then what resources will we need? Do we need new technology? Do we need to hire a consultant to build out our PracticePanther software? Do we need to buy case management software to begin with? You know, if you don't already have PracticePanther. So what resources are going to help us make the best process? And then from there, we'll go into our 7 steps on building a process. So I would say go through those 6 questions before number 1 in the 7 steps. And once you have those outlined, this will make a ton of sense. So this is my 7 steps towards building a process. It starts with you doing it a couple of times at the least, and then you record it. So you can use Zoom for this, you can use Google Meet, you can use Loom. I don't care what the program is, but that's a way for you to do it the way you want it done, taking almost no extra effort other than clicking the button to start recording. Once you have it recorded with you going through it somewhere between 1 and 3 times, depending upon how exactly the same it's going to be, then you're going to delegate it. Send that recording to the person who you want to do it. And genuinely, I specifically want you to not give them any more feedback. Like you want them to work off of the video. So have them run through it. If they have any questions immediately, great, answer those questions, but have them really try to follow your video by itself 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. As they do it, they might come up with things a certain way. They might not understand the way you did something. They might want to know why. So now you get together, you discuss improvements. So we can automate this part of it. We can change the color of this form so it's easier to find. We can tag this a certain way so we can find the template easier, whatever that is. Now they go through it and you record it. So literally record it with them doing it and then figuratively record that. Run it through rev.com, run it through Otter AI, have them type it out, whatever that's going to look like. And now you have a video, you have it written down, you've got all the stuff that's needed for it in one place. And then you're going to review your process. So whether you review it when there are issues that come up, when you review it when you get certain feedback, when you review it at certain times, we'll go through those at the end and walk you through it. But that is the 7 steps that I suggest everybody use for those processes. And then obviously, while you are doing it yourself and while they're recording it, verbalize it. Don't just stare at an empty screen, but walk through the concepts behind this. Why do we click this button first? Why do we pull this automatically? How do we find the right case to apply this to, those sort of things? Because you're going to put all that together in hopefully the easiest way and the quickest way for somebody to be able to just grab that video and run with it. When you do hire somebody, when somebody's out sick and someone else has to pitch in, when you do expand, whatever that looks like.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think this really, I think this helps with consistency and achieving your overall goals, but also in building the confidence of your team. They're doing it right, the right way. They're doing it in the right order. You know, that building that confidence, I think is really important as well.
and a lot of times having that video will help you realize when the technology has changed. Like, you know, Libby told you, I've been a PracticePanther user for so long, there was not the 2-way texting. So at some point we realized that was there and changed how we did certain things to make sure we were utilizing that new feature, because we could look at, oh, this is what the screen used to look like. That button wasn't there. Now it's over here, you know, whatever it is for those updates. So have it written and video, whether somebody's an auditory learner, a kinesthetic learner, a visual learner, you'll have it all covered in that way. All right, so like I talked about, we'll never be perfect. So enhancing and evolving your process. These are the questions that I walk myself through, or really that I coach my team to walk themselves through as we're talking about how to update our systems, our processes, our SOPs, our playbooks, whatever you want to call it. The first one, how can we make it easier to learn how to do this? A lot of times we might have a video of how to do a demand letter, like we'll talk about here, but are we training the person on what a demand letter is for them to understand how that fits? So is there something that we can do to change our process to make it easier to learn how to do this thing or how to do it correctly? How can we make it quicker to do? Can we have the stuff organized in the right manner? Can we automate different steps of it? Can we make sure that it generates faster? Can we call adjusters back sooner to get counter offers? What are some of the things we can do to speed up the process? Especially what parts can we automate, whether that's through AI, whether that's through technology, whether that's through Zapier, whether it's through PracticePanther, whatever. The more that you can automate, the easier it's going to be to get through a lot of these processes. We're going to dive into automation in a little bit more detail later, so I just want to touch on it. The next one, how can we save resources by editing this process? Can we cut out an entire person from this process? If we just have somebody re-entering data from one program to the next, can we swap that over to Zapier and now our legal assistant doesn't need to be in this one specific process at all? Coming down here, how can we make it better for clients? At the end of the day, I'm biased, but I think everything that you do is marketing. So the more fun a client has going through it, or the easier it is, or the more efficiently you can walk a client through their entire case, the more likely they are to come back for future work, the more likely they are to become a referral source and send you business, the more likely they are to write you a review. So a lot of times we have these processes that become really difficult on clients. Like, no offense to, of the 90 people that are here now, for those of you that are estate planning attorneys, if you have your clients fill out like a 10-page form to get all their data in one place, that's probably not best for them. However, it might save you money and time. But if you get to the point where you can have, your lowest level, newest staff member talk them through it and fill it out, that may make the process a lot better for a client, even if it's more complicated for you. So you're constantly going to have to figure out the balance, because a lot of times you'll get different answers between these questions, and you have to decide what makes the most sense. Do I need to save the money? Do I want to have the better experience? Do I need to save the time? Do I want to make this more of a catch-all, whatever that is? And then ultimately, what do we need to train? What do we need to train less skilled labor to accomplish this task? And I say that from the standpoint of when it is just you, you're the one doing everything. And if you as a lawyer can bill $250 an hour or $300 an hour or $500 an hour, how can you get somebody to do this job for $100 an hour? Then how can you get somebody to do it for $25 an hour, then $15 an hour? How can you push this task down to lower skilled labor? And again, I'm not telling you that you do that 100% of the time. I personally think we often push down like answering the phone for intake and reception to be the cheapest person at the firm. I actually think that's one you should spend more money on, because you want somebody who has the really good soft skill of answering the phone, of sounding like they care, of actually listening to the client. So there may be situations where you intentionally don't move it down to somebody else, but ultimately, McDonald's survives not because they make a great hamburger, but because a 15-year-old at their first job can handle most of the work over there. So what are the things at your firm that are that hamburger flipping versus what are the things at your firm that truly require that expertise? And the more that you can get somebody to get the reps in, the more you can have that receptionist become a client intake coordinator and only take new calls, the faster they get those reps, the faster they get better at it, the better they get at amending the system, the more likely you are to close it, the happier clients are having the experience from the expert, etc. So you don't need to implement all these on everything, but think through these when it comes time to enhance some of your systems. All right, so, like a stoplight, complicated systems are bad. Complicated systems might require too many people. It might require too many steps. It might require too much software. And then if somebody leaves, you can't do this the same way. If the system updates, you can't, it doesn't work with Zapier the same way. They upgrade one of the systems, whatever it is. So simplifying is good. Automating is great. And we will talk about automation. Again, automation is not the end all be all, but it is super helpful on the majority of work. And Libby's going to walk you through some of the specific benefits of efficiency.
Perfect. Appreciate that, Jordan. As he talked, we're going to get these, automation impacts on your firm's efficiency. Thomson Reuters actually put a study out there of small law firms where they're saying that 80% of lawyers out there feel that they spend too much time on admin tasks and not enough time practicing the law. You may kind of resonate with that stat, some of you on this call, which actually kind of really aligns perfectly with the article where it talks about lawyers perform just 2.3 hours of billable work in the average 8-hour day. That is not enough billable hours. You should be able to improve that greatly, and automation is definitely a key to do that. You can enhance that client experience. Really, a benefit of becoming more efficient will be immediately felt by your clients because you're working faster and you're working more efficiently, really for them. And 73% of clients consider their experience as really important. And it's kind of interesting because your clients will share both good and bad experiences with their friends, with their network. And so be sure they're sharing good about you. You really want them sharing those good referrals. When it comes to task management, technology really has the ability to automate a lot of different things. You're looking at 23% of attorney tasks and 69% of paralegal tasks. A lot of these could be even, those simple reminder follow-ups, because those are time consuming and they're kind of soul sucking. Nobody has fun sending out reminders. Nobody wants to remind people about meetings or that they haven't paid a bill or that they need to turn in something. That's not really where you want to focus in on your time. You want to focus in on your specialty. So get some of those small tasks automated and get them off of your desk. And then finally, we will hit on document automation today. As Jordan mentioned, we'll be talking specifically about a demand letter this time around. But this is a huge saving. If you are a person who is still finding and replacing, or if you are still copying and pasting certain contracts or agreements or forms, think about the 82% time savings you can have when you start utilizing kind of document templates and document automations. And then that's really all to say is automation is not an excuse to do work that is just okay. If you're completing just okay work, automation really won't improve your processes or your steps, and speeding up a poor process, really won't help your firm win back that lost time. And so, automation is also your chance to save time on those small things and make a truly personal experience. When I'm out kind of talking with people at various events or networking opportunities, they think that automation might replace people. And that's, automation is not a replacement for the human interaction at your firm. It really makes your human interactions more meaningful, both for your clients and for your staff. And so when done well, automation can really kind of have a positive client experience, which sets you up for more repeat business, as we talked about, more client referrals, and more time to bill for your expertise and your services.
Yeah, I go back to, the 2.3 hours. If you're billing $250 an hour, you're leaving $1,300 on the table every day. And I'm not saying that you're ever going to be able to bill 8 hours in an 8-hour day, but if you could spend, $5 a month, if you could spend $15 an hour, if you could spend, $25 an hour on somebody to take some of that off your plate and instead be billing $250 an hour, $300 an hour, you're actually costing yourself money by doing all these things yourself versus delegating or automating. So.
And as Jordan mentioned, it doesn't have to happen all at once. Kind of take your time, put in these processes as they come up. Maybe start with the processes that need the most help and go from there, or start with that low-hanging fruit on what can be fixed the easiest. But you don't have to do it all at once. Really kind of take it a step at a time.
Yeah, and just to echo like a specific situation, how many times do you have that client that needs you to repeat things a second time? If you can make that into an automated email after the conversation, you save that issue. But when you have that client who really needs you to go through something, it's a multi-million-dollar settlement. It's a really complicated trust with them. It's a very highly contentious family law case. By having so much of the lower level tasks and so much of the easier things automated, you can spend more time with each individual client as they need it, from an emotional standpoint, from a technical standpoint. Because remember, the two biggest reasons that we get in trouble with clients: trust, stealing trust money or having trust issues, which is totally, something that we're not going to cover here. Hopefully you avoid any of those. The second one's communication. And a lot of times that issue is not communication in an intentional way. that communication is an issue where people are too busy. They've got 100 cases. They can't get back to the client's email in a day. There's an emergency that comes up on this. So being able to focus on some of those things for the actual human part of what we do is what helps you stand out.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry. Before we do this, I had a great question. So somebody, Alex asked, what's more effective to have a single person cover several functions or to have several people each with their defined tasks? And so I talked about how if you have just one person, a lot of times people will leave. You want to cross train, but you still want to give somebody the lead on a specific task. So this person may be the first person that answers the phone. They may do all the intakes, but somebody else may be able to cover for them if they're out, if they're sick, if they leave. And so I thought that was a really great way to sort of thread the needle between having everybody their expertise, but also having everything covered.
Awesome.
All right, then thank you, Denise, for letting me know that not everybody could see the original question. So, all right, so let's lead by example. We're going to go through 3 specific examples. Hopefully, they will apply to all of you. Even if you don't do a demand letter, really, we're talking about document generation and workflows. I believe if you are the lawyer who doesn't generate any documents, please let me know because I want to take your practice area instead of mine. But until that becomes a thing, that's what we're talking about. Obviously intake and then billing and invoicing. So getting paid, unless your contingency fee, then you need billing or invoicing in some manner. So that's why we did a PI focused demand letter for DocGen versus the billing and invoicing. So this way we'll have something direct, 2 out of the 3 will be directly specific to everybody here. All right, so when it comes to intake, we're actually doing 2 different systems here. So like the phone rings, right? This is somebody contacts the firm, they fill out a website form, whatever that is. So who, the intake person, or if you're a smaller firm, you does what? Speaks with that lead and completes a form. Libby's going to show you how to build the form in PracticePanther. When do you do this? ASAP. In what order? Right then and there. There's going to be follow-up. We'll talk about that on the next slide. But like it can be as simple as this. Just the phone rings, you answer it. Hello, welcome to Driven Law. This is Jordan Ostroff. How may I help you today? And then you know where to pull this form, to go through the questions, whatever that is from there. And like I said, we'll dive into the specific examples. The second part of intake on the next slide is the follow-up. So please, please, please follow up with leads. Whether you pay for them or not, it is super important because most law firms don't. Whereas every study I've seen shows about a 92% close rate happening after the 5th point of contact. So I'm not telling you to do 5 consultations with everybody, but have some automated emails, have some texts, have some follow-up calls, etc. Somebody said issues logging in. Yes, you can watch the recording. This will be recorded to pull up the earlier stuff. So when it comes time to follow up, maybe now it goes to the intake person instead of reception. Maybe now it's still on you and when they handle the beginning of it. And then some series of emails, texts, calls. You are welcome to do any other follow-up. Those are the most common. And then when. So maybe you send an email immediately after the call to confirm the conversation. And if your bar requires letting them know you don't represent them yet until they sign it, whatever that is, maybe you text them, the next morning. Maybe you call them exactly 24 hours later, assuming if they called you at 3 o'clock on Monday because they were free at that time, they might be free at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, whatever that looks like. And then in what order, email, call, text. Figure out what works best for you and for the client. If you are a reactive area of law, meaning something happened and your client has to react to that, they got arrested, they got into a car accident, those things, you want to try to be faster. If they're more proactive, where it doesn't have to happen in a time frame, they're considering divorce, but nothing's been filed, they are considering getting an estate plan, but they haven't been diagnosed with anything immediately, then you may want to follow up a little bit slower, but for a longer period of time. So exactly what the breakdown is going to be different for everybody, but having it written out, writing out what time things happen, writing out the exact specific content of the email or the text, or when to do the follow-up call, or having a follow-up, intake form and whatnot, those things will help you get the consistency that we're talking about from here. And so, Libby, if you want to show them how easy it is to put together a intake form.
Absolutely. And thank you. That was a great process and really talking about intake. And you'll find that, that's really where that human interaction comes into play, especially on those phone calls and following up. But when you're talking about the forms, as he mentioned, there are a few key areas you can automate to really ensure your new prospective clients are taken care of. Before we kind of get into that, native is what PracticePanther use. So we actually use native intake forms. Some of you out there might be toggling back and forth between a couple different screens and a couple different logins. Maybe you have a CRM login, and then you have your case management login and things like that. Within PracticePanther, it's all the same login. Again, that we want to be that kind of one source of truth for you. So when it comes to actually building the forms, it's super easy. We have a drag and drop function. You can kind of see it here on the screen. No coding is involved. You can customize it for what your specific needs are. You can add as many questions as you like. And you can kind of drop in whether it's checkboxes, multiple kind of checklist, drop down lists. There's about 5 or 6 different drag and drop fields that you can kind of create. And again, a text line can be a first name, it can be a last name, it can be a spouse name. You can really kind of customize them for your area of law and what you need. From there, you name your forms. And we get as specific and descriptive as possible, because what I recommend is having multiple intake forms for your firm. You're looking to have an intake form for every source of lead that you have. So if you're on Google and you do Google AdWords, if you're on Facebook, if you're on TikTok, on this one, we built this one just for Jordan. So it is his intake form for his personal business development. And so the reason why this is so important is because then these names of your intake form become your tags, become how you notify where the leads have come from. So at the end of the month, when you're pulling lead reports, you'll know exactly where your leads are coming from, how they're coming in. And it's a really great kind of automated feature to understand the sourcing of your leads, where they're coming from, and which ones are closing a lot better.
Can I jump in for that for 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely.
The biggest thing that I would tell you from the PracticePanther tags is I always try and tag things in 2 stages, if that makes sense. So like, it's not just a referral, that's one tag. It's a referral from this specific name, another tag. So now I can look up all of my referrals, or I can look up just the ones from Jane Doe. It's not just from social media, it's also from Facebook, it's also from Instagram. So I can look up not just that channel, but that specific platform. Just one thing to consider. And then obviously, as Libby said, the hired or not hired becomes essential as well, because you might see that you get all of your stuff from pay-per-click ads, but Google you close at a 50% rate, and Bing ads you only close at a 40% rate. So it might be something to consider.
Absolutely, yeah. Consider where that money gets invested, and maybe put a little bit more in Google. And then from there, you can actually immediately assign a task. You can assign it to a specific person within your law firm, and then really send that notification email as well. So they're kind of getting all of that information immediately once those forms are completed. And then after you kind of set up your intake form, what you're really doing is you're really linking your fields. So whether you call it, first name or client name or, anything else, it matches no matter what we call it in PracticePanther, which will be contact first name. And so we have a whole drop-down list of things that you can match. And again, you can have custom fields specific to your area of practice and specific to your needs. After you kind of fill out those linked forms, you even have some advanced options here as well. You can immediately create a new contact in the system if you'd like. You can also immediately create a new matter if that's important, depending on what kind of intake form they're completing. And then you can even assign those records to an attorney. So you can assign a task to maybe your intake specialist, and you can assign the record to your attorney or your paralegal. We've also seen people use intake forms to get updated information. And so those last 2, you can toggle on to yes if you want to maybe get updated information about your clients, if you need to see if they've had a change of address or a change of phone number or things like that. So this will allow, again, all the important staff members to get the right task notifications while also kind of really sharing that new lead information. And so just a couple intake features I wanted to talk about here when it comes to PracticePanther. Once you create your intake form, the really cool thing about them is you can clone them and duplicate them. So don't feel like you have to create a unique intake form for every single source that you have. if you're advertising or pulling in business development from a number of different places. So super easy to clone. You can then edit from there. If you want to add a field, take out a field, it's super easy. One of the things I've seen customers utilize is on the form, ask about the best time of day to reach them. So then you can add that contact tag. So as soon as you pull up the contact, you know exactly if you should call in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening. It can kind of be a great service, especially if you're having a hard time reaching that client or the new client. And then ask them also if they wish to communicate via text. First, it's a really big privacy concern. You have to ask them. But also texting is huge. I don't know if you guys are aware, but a text message has an open rate of 90% within the first 3 minutes. Although emails still super important to get those quick status updates, send quick reminders, text can really kind of be the best way to do that. Again, be sure you're asking for permission though. And then finally, kind of setting those reminders when it's needed, really sending that encouragement. And that is super automated. That's not something that should fall to a person.
Speaking of fine tuning, I'm going to go steal the morning, afternoon, and evening tags because I've never thought about that, but that makes perfect sense.
Fantastic.
Anyway, and that's what we're talking about, progress, not perfection. So when it comes to, you've got a process down, now I look at, how do you answer the phone? Are you, smile, answer it warmly, ask, change the how can I help you to how may I help you today, things like that. Create a script for the conversation if you want. I know some law firms are adamant about having a script and following it to the T. Other ones have no script. I prefer to kind of find the best of both worlds, or some sort of outline. So by having that form for them to fill out, I think that sort of goes through the natural conversation, and then the answers can be entered on the form that we're doing on our side. Filling out the correct form or changing some of the information on the form to get more information from the clients. Or if you find that first call is taking too long, maybe you cut some of the information out and don't get that until a later step. And then obviously you can always tweak the follow-up copy, the text, the emails, the number, what they say, the frequency. And then the biggest thing that I've noticed as a benefit for an intake process is that warm transfer to an attorney. The one caveat to this is if you're going to do it and there's a form that's been filled out, I want the attorney to review the form. I always hate when you call the bank and you give the first person a 30-minute explanation of what happened, and then they transfer you to somebody else, and now you have to give a 20-minute conversation about that, and whatever. So in those situations, I suggest something like, hey, let me see if I can get one of the attorneys on the line, call the attorney. Okay, hey, I'm sending over the form for this client. Please review it. I'll talk to them for another 2 minutes. Come back. All right, the attorney's going to be available. They're wrapping something up right now. Are there any other questions you have? Anything else? Make sure the form's filled out. And now you can make that transfer where they're up to date and it becomes smooth and seamless. So little things like that make a huge difference on the intake process. Before we jump on, any questions about intake or form generation? Cool, hearing nothing. Look, I appreciate that. Now we're up to almost 100 people here live. You guys are awesome. You're taking the time to be with us live. If you have questions, do not hesitate, because we want to make sure, everybody can watch the copy, but you are here now. Libby, I believe this is a question for you in the Q&A.
Oh, let me check that out. Oh, sorry about that. Let me move that off screen. So if we upload a Word document as an intake form template, are we able to use that template and fill it out when a client calls? I guess I can't say I know exactly what you mean by uploading a Word document. We don't upload documents like a Word document as that template. You'll actually build these forms within PracticePanther utilizing the drag and drop. Where you start uploading Word documents will be in the document templates that we'll get to kind of here momentarily.
Awesome. And then
so
obviously, oops, sorry.
Well, that's all right. You will create the contact and then you'll apply that template. That is how that would go. Excuse me. Awesome.
All right. So now let's move on over to better workflows. Is it better to have potential clients to fill out the intake form? John asks. And John, this one I talked about a little while ago, but I'll echo it because it's so important. It depends, right? The ultimate lawyer answer that means nothing. Like, Do you have so many leads that you want clients to self-screen by seeing who fills out the form? Do you need to capitalize on the leads by removing the hoop of them filling out the intake form? So like for estate planning firms, I always recommend at the very least, there should be some view by both sides. So maybe your intake person takes most of the information. The client gets a, hey, do me a favor, please confirm that this form is correct. And they can make any edits or changes or ask questions, or if they fill anything out, then obviously you want to see it before the consultation or before the strategy session or before the signing meeting, whatever you call that next phase, to make sure you do have all the correct information, to make sure you're not missing anything from it. So I hate to not give you the easy answer, but really it depends upon each practice. All right, so let's get more done talking about workflows and DocGen. So like Libby said, we're talking about filing a demand letter. So this involves, at least at my firm, a legal assistant, a paralegal, and an attorney. So when do we do this by? At a set deadline. You know, specifically the demand letter, we're trying to get it done within 90 days of the case starting, because that's usually when people are wrapping up treatment. But it's not going to be that case for everything. Sometimes people have way more in bills than there is a policy on it, period. Sometimes treatment takes way longer. So we're setting a specific deadline that demand letter has to get out. And then we have the legal assistant to the paralegal to the attorney to the legal assistant. And I'll explain, that's the LAPALA at the bottom, but I swear it makes sense on the next slide. So that's going to be the legal assistant requesting all the medical records. We're going to do this a bunch as the case continues on. Because medical records take forever to get, especially from hospitals. So we want those immediately. Whereas with the chiropractor or orthopedist, there's going to be ongoing treatment. So we need to get the final updated records before the demand letter. Then a paralegal is going to put all those together into our demand letter template with the case facts from the client. Then obviously, ethically, and why not, the attorney is going to review it, make final edits, finalize the letter, send it out. And then we have the legal assistant schedule a client meeting with the lawyer at that point. That's going to allow the lawyer to be best positioned to have the conversation with them about what do you actually want to accept. If they come back to us with X, if they don't take the demand letter, you know, what else is going on in your life, anything else that, you know, we missed in terms of the impact on the day-to-day that's not showing up in the records, any of those things, and getting that final number. So that's our process that we have here. Libby's going to show you how to take something like this and actually put it into a workflow and put it into DocGen next.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, let's talk about kind of incorporating those workflows, what it looks like to create that workflow and then launch it. Then we'll kind of get into that template and how that kind of works. And just know that we've kind of done this as once you have the demand letter finalized, moving forward, kind of what happens next. And as you see in before, a lot of different moving things, moving processes within workflows. And so it's hard to, you know, keep up. I've talked to a number of attorneys when I ask them how they manage all of their tasks, and they then, you know, point to their head, which is kind of scary, because how do you keep all of those dates and all of that information organized? How do you share that with your team so that you can actually accomplish your goals? And so when you're creating your workflow, you really get to assign specialized tasks to relevant staff members with due dates. So for those lawyers who have the luck of having multiple maybe intake professionals or maybe multiple staffers, you can actually, depending upon their specialization, you can assign those tasks to those relevant staff members and then put specific due dates around those tasks. You can create tasks as high, a medium, or low priority levels, so people know immediately where that priority is. And then you can add information like texts, emails, or pop-up reminders, which is really great to have, again, so you're not constantly following up with people to see where things are. Within PracticePanther, you'll actually be able to watch kind of step-by-step as things get done. An interesting perk within PracticePanther is you can actually create public and private workflows. So if it's a workflow that is just, you know, specific to you and maybe your needs, you can create one just for yourself, or you can create it public. So really anybody in the firm has access to it, any lawyer, any paralegal, anybody who has those permissions. And then you can assign those tasks within a workflow to your client. So you can kind of get them involved on accomplishing these tasks as well. I say it as a contact in parentheses because that's what we refer to them in PracticePanther. So you're setting up all of these processes. It is super helpful if you actually have all of these processes written down, because then you aren't forgetting steps, you aren't missing different things. When it's already written down, you can immediately then take it and then transfer it to PracticePanther. And so when you're launching that workflow, you're setting kind of that launch event date, whether it's a court date, whether it's the date that you want to get the demand letter out, whatever that event date that launches your workflow. And then when you launch it, the really cool thing about PracticePanther workflows is the automation kind of then comes in. It will tally all the dates, all the tasks, and assign all the staff members kind of right before your eyes. It takes like maybe 10 seconds or so. It's a pretty cool option where you no longer have to think, oh, well, 30 days from, okay, a week from this, I got to do this. It actually fills in all that information for you. And as I mentioned, as tasks are completed, you get to then go on to the next task on what's due for the appropriate staff can then be notified. Cool thing also with workflows, just like with intake forms, you can set it, reuse it over and over and over, and you can also clone and edit it. So if you have multiple practice areas where kind of the beginning part of workflows are similar, but then it kind of evolves and changes as it goes along, you can edit, add in different tasks, add in different event dates, and kind of move forward that way. We want to make it very easy. Once you create something, you can clone it, edit it, and reuse it. And so let's kind of get into the document template for just a second. This is going to, again, be that demand letter. I want to show you, this is our example. In left is going to be the template that we upload into PracticePanther. Now, I do want to call out the pink. The pink is just something that I did to kind of notify what the different dynamic fields are. As you can see, not everybody here is going to have an insurance adjuster's name or maybe a party at fault name. So you can really see how specialized you can kind of get with the various practice areas. And so the pink was just to kind of show how, so you can easily kind of look at it here on the system, and then how it will spit out once you assign it to a contact. So there was that question in the Q&A about your the document generation. Do you need to create the contact first? Once you create the contact, then you can kind of set up a document template and apply that template to that contact. And then from there, let's see if we can get there it goes. When you're actually looking kind of at workflows within PracticePanther, I took just a couple screenshots of kind of the initial workflows, but there were about 15 different steps to building kind of our demand letter workflow. So that'll kind of give you an idea on how that looks. But here when you're creating your workflow, you're going to, again, give it a subject and a name. And then you're going to build out the different event and tasks that you have for it. You're setting your meeting with the client and the attorney. You got to schedule that meeting, and then you got to have the meeting. And then you got to, once everything's approved, you got to mail that demand letter. And then you have that, initial contact with your adjuster. So there's a lot of things that happen every day, every couple of days. And so your workflow, it'll automatically pop up, one business day, one regular day, weeks, months, however long you need, either before or after a previous step. And the cool thing is you can have contingent tasks, so it won't actually come up on your to-do list until the previous task is done. So you can't, have a meeting until you set that meeting date. So obviously we're not going to plan the actual meeting until, and that task won't come up until the meeting is set. And then when you're applying that workflow, you'll go to the contact and hit that apply workflow, and you'll type in that first date. That's kind of that launch date that we talked about. And that's when all of these tasks will then automate. You can kind of see, just to make sure before you launch it, that it is the right people in the right order, getting the right reminders. And then as soon as you save that, you'll see your task list. You'll have an activity list for each of your contacts within PracticePanther. And this will immediately come up all of the different tasks for that contact, who owns them, and you can actually even change this information. If you want, there's other information you can pull up, like when the actual due date is, you can incorporate that as well. And as you complete tasks, you'll see the task is complete. Maybe it's overdue. It'll be in bright red to kind of notify anybody that it hasn't been done yet. And then these kind of little features I wanted to call out. This is our high priority, the bright red exclamation point. low priority, you know, if that's something that's important to your firm to kind of really understand that priority level, you can even kind of add that in there. And then finally, as I mentioned, you can really incorporate workflows to your customers, to your clients as well. So whether you are utilizing a client portal or you send emails to your client, this is actually what they'll receive. They can kind of click a button and then go in there and see everything that they need to do when the due date is, and then can get those reminders as well, whether it's a quick text reminder, it can be a pop-up actually within the platform, or it can be a nice little email reminder.
But 2 questions, Libby, before we jump over. If you add a text reminder to an event that has a contact has been assigned to, does the reminder go to the PracticePanther user, the contact, or both? If both, is there a way to set it so the text reminder only goes to the contact, so the attorney isn't bombarded with text reminders throughout the whole day?
You can absolutely only send reminders to who you want to get reminders. So if you need to remind the client, but you don't need to remind the attorney, you can absolutely set it up that way.
And I guess going forward, is there a way that you can make the text larger on your screen for some of the screen share people are having some trouble seeing it? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't. If there are some workflows out there that maybe you're trying to build, if you're a PracticePanther user, there is a kind of a little bell in the top right corner where you can ask for support, and they will, you know, they can kind of go with you one-on-one on kind of setting up these workflows and really turning your processes into workflows. If you're not, you know, super confident in getting started, you know, we'll definitely help you with that. And one really cool thing about our workflows is we actually have a default workflow in the system. This is a new feature that was added earlier this year. So if you haven't been in there to look at your workflows, check out that default intake workflow, and it'll actually walk you through every step of how to start a workflow and what the different steps require, and how to kind of fill those out. So we've heard feedback from a lot of our customers that they'd like to start seeing more default information. So we've built default workflows and default intake forms, so you have kind of a basis to start from.
And Maria asks, do we get notifications when a task is complete in PracticePanther?
You can if you want to. I know some people, it's kind of really dependent upon how many notifications, you know, they don't want to be notified of every little thing. So you can really set what you want to get notified and what isn't going to be as important. And you can also set permissions on the back end on who can create, edit, view, and delete different tasks or projects or anything within PracticePanther. So very customizable. So you're making sure you're giving the right settings to the right people, and then people can then customize their notifications. Think of it almost like a social media notification in the top corner. You'll kind of get a little red 1, 2, 3, you know, depending on what's completed.
All right, looks, oh,
Awesome.
wait. Mary Lynn asks, where is the default workflow located?
If you go kind of, if you're on the main dashboard screen, at the very top, you'll see a bunch of different buttons for contacts, matters, activities. It'll actually be up there in activities. When you scroll down, you'll see, you'll head to workflows. And when you get to that initial template page, you can either create your own template or you'll see default workflow in your workflow page.
All right.
Good questions.
So then fine tuning some of that doc gen, you know, how do you get records faster? How do you get the information you need to put into the template faster? You know, we know that there are some medical offices that send out, you know, records only on Tuesdays. You got to let them know by Friday to get it the next Tuesday, stuff like that. You know, what personal info can we need from our client for pain and suffering? You know, can we text them every couple of weeks to fill out a pain journal or let us know what's going on? How can we make the template more impactful? Can we write the stuff in there better? Jumping down to 5, are there new case law or statutes? Florida drastically changed basically all the PI stuff in December. So we updated some of our templates to include the new language on bad faith or the new deadlines, or whatever that looks like. And then, you know, in the situation I had, we were calling the client after the document was done, but maybe we need to book it beforehand. So stuff like that. So that'll get us through some of the changes to make on DocGen, and same thing for workflow. Can we cut out steps? Can we automate specific tasks? Can we make them contingent so that we know, you know, what's not done to go wherever anything else is? All right, and then you want to jump to you want to grab Rhonda's question before we go into billing?
Oh yeah. So if we delete an intake form after it's reviewed, So there doesn't end up being hundreds on the intake history page. It deletes the intake form from the client's activity record. Is there a way to delete it from the intake screen history, but not delete it from the client activities? Rhonda, that is a great question, and it gets a little bit more specific. So I can get in with one of our practice management specialists and make sure and follow up with you to make sure that you are deleting only what you want to delete. I don't want to go in too much and overpromise anything.
And then you want to grab Mary Lynn's info while I do billing?
Yep, I got her info.
Okay, cool. All right, so in terms of billing and invoicing, right? Like we want to get paid. That becomes super important. So this one's a little bit different. We're assuming you have a billing clerk. If you don't, then replace that with paralegal, replace it with you, whatever it is. The biggest thing for me that I suggest is sending out invoices twice a month instead of once a month. Obviously, you may have to change what's written in your contracts, but if a client's going to stiff you, you know it sooner. If you're going to do a ton of billing on a case, the client has the payments broken down a little bit. You know, it's something that's going to take a little bit more time. I have found the juice to be worth the squeeze when we did a lot more family law and criminal defense. You may not find the juice to be worth the squeeze. It's up to you. But ultimately, in this order, we're talking about E to A to BC, which again will make sense on the next slide, where we have everyone entering their time every day. Oh my God, please do not let your staff wait 30 days and then try and backtrack all the time, or even till the end of the week. Like, please, 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 every day. If you have to, go on everybody's calendar, book them from 4:30 to 5 to enter all their time, make sure it's there, etc. Then again, attorney is going to review, edit, approve them. That's really easy to do in PracticePanther. Libby will walk you through it, and actually how to find extra money. And then your billing clerk, you know, sends those invoices. The reminders are set by them or in the workflow to collect money, because ultimately you got to get paid. That becomes super important.
So let's kind of look into maximizing that billing efficiency and accuracy. And I think when it comes to the beginning of a brand new client relationship, I think being transparent about kind of money and the way they can make payments in the front end is going to be really critical. You know, really get them comfortable with paying their bill. That's going to be very important for your team. And so some of our customers who may have a little bit of an initial high cost to start work, they offer a payment plan. And so a payment plan is definitely something within PracticePanther that you can launch. And instead of paying maybe a large upfront sum, they set up for, 4, 6, 8 months, depending on, what that need is for the client. One benefit of having a payment plan is you really can't be late for a payment plan. You already have that payment method on file. And so it just kind of when decided, when you first get charged and when that recurring charge happens. And so that's kind of one really great benefit to billing that our customers have utilized. In addition to that, a lot of our customers are utilizing the multiple invoices, where you're really saving hours on generating invoices one at a time, and you're actually doing it multiply. Batch review and approving is then also available, really help reduce that overall time it takes to get through all of your invoices. I was working with one client who mentioned that it used to be a full-day job to kind of go in there, get in, check the invoices, approve them one by one, edit them if you need to, and then they even physically mailed them out. So switching to kind of that multiple approach where you're handling multiple matters and clients at a time has been very beneficial for them. And it all helped them save, it went from a full day's work to just a couple hours. And then you'll see there are additional settings kind of within that you can set if there's, an interest rate that you need to add and, non-billable matters and things like that. So there are kind of different settings within that multiple invoices that you can utilize. And then maybe you're a person or a lawyer who needs to send just that retainer request, and that can actually be sent via email and can be paid immediately by your clients. So it's set and sent through a secure client portal, and so they can actually click that link and then it be directed to the bank account that you need. And then with PracticePanther, we actually have a payment solution, Panther Payments. And so we've actually built what we call these one links. They're custom payment links that you can kind of build within the software. And you can actually send this personalized link out to either a specific contact and then put in a little message. Hey, it was great working with you, anything like that. Or you can actually drop these one links either on your website. I've seen people utilize them in email, even their email signatures, anywhere where clients might see where they need to maybe upload that payment. I wanted to kind of show off what that even looks like, that once they click that link, if it is a general link, you'll see how much they're looking to pay. You put the client information, the payment method, and all of that credit card, ACH, kind of whatever payment method that they want to use. And then you get to be paid immediately once they hit that pay button link. You're not waiting for a mailed invoice. You're not waiting on the post office for it to arrive. You're not waiting on the deposit on your bank account. It immediately kind of goes into your account. And then really you can kind of improve communication, whether that's in your intake, within workflows, within billing. There are two different ways within PracticePanther that we want to kind of keep it native, keep you within the software. If you're a person who maybe gives out your personal cell phone number and you get calls and texts, nights and weekends, one great benefit is you can actually remove that barrier and just keep it into PracticePanther. You'll actually get a unique number within PracticePanther, and you can have a conversation as if you were on your phone texting, but it's in PracticePanther, and it's really connected directly to the contact and is already connected directly to that matter as well. And then you even have these kind of unlimited e-signature options, whether you're utilizing maybe a little bit of an old-fashioned snail mail, or you're spending money on Adobe Sign or maybe even DocuSign. One way to get a little bit more efficient, save a little money, stay within the same platform and send e-signatures directly within PracticePanther. There's unlimited options for e-signatures, and you can also get notified when they're opened and when they're completed, again, depending upon what kind of notifications you want to get. And so those are kind of two things that I would definitely recommend utilizing. I believe we had some questions come up.
Yep, you got a bunch in the Q&A.
Yeah, it looks like can we ask for client reviews via PracticePanther? We've actually had several people build out in the intake form and use them as kind of review or surveys. Maybe after you close a new client, or after you're closing a case, you can actually send maybe like a 3-question to generate a client review. And then the cool thing is actually then connected directly to that contact moving forward under the intake tab. And so you can definitely do that.
And use the texting to send your direct Google link to their phone. If you go into your Google My Business page, you can pull up a link that goes right to the writer review. They don't have to Google you, then click the review, then have it come up. And you can do that with the texting.
And that's a really great thought as well. Are we able to make fillable PDFs if we upload a judicial form and have the client fill it out that way? That's not something that we currently offer right now. There'll be maybe some fun things to talk about in the future, but right now intake forms are kind of really the best way to get that information into PracticePanther. And so that's kind of what I would recommend utilizing for that, or I think that would be kind of the best.
What about the client portal for two-way texting?
Yes, that is definitely something where the clients will have to have access. It'll actually be sent directly to their phone. So although the text message comes in through the PracticePanther software for you, it'll appear as a text message for the customer or for the client.
You've got in e-signature, we're not able to cancel requests. Is there a plan to add the feature to cancel requested e-signatures?
I am not aware of any, but Alex, that is definitely something I can follow up on and make sure we have that answer for you.
And what about e-signatures for couples?
E-signatures for couples.
So like for an estate plan, having the husband and wife sign it, currently it only requires one email to the contact.
Yeah, it'll email the contact, but then you'll also have, you can build out client relationships within PracticePanther. So you can add a spouse as a relationship and then send them e-signature as well.
Okay, yes, there will be a link here. Celeste, and I know a couple other people answered that one. And then we had the template. Okay, what about Laura asked, could you use the e-signature to do a fillable PDF?
Could you, I don't know if I know exactly what she's asking. Do you, Jordan, use a e-signature for a fillable PDF?
I hate PDFs because then when you edit them, you have to do everything totally differently. So I try to avoid them. I know some courts require a specific format, which is why they become super helpful. Thankfully, I don't have that problem, so I don't know.
And Laura, I can have maybe a practice management specialist will reach out and answer that specific question, so that way you know exactly what's happening. And you can definitely use reminders to complete e-signatures. So if you want to, if it hasn't been signed yet, and you're kind of really in a place where you need to set up, you can set up to 5 reminders. You know, if you want to send one via text the following day, and then an email 2 days after that, and then a pop-up, you know, if you use the client portal, a pop-up within the portal. I would say email and text are probably the best reminders to use, unless you just happen to have, unless you happen to have clients who are very engaged and who are constantly in the client portal and, you know, looking at things. I would recommend both a text or an email reminder for when it comes to clients.
All right. Ready to do the fine-tuning the billing process?
I think so.
All right, so again, we're just looking at some different options here. So how do we make it easier for people to enter time? Maybe that's carving out the time on the calendar. Maybe it's building some templates into the time management system, the billing system. How can we make sure to limit unbillable time? If you as the attorney find that you're cutting a bunch of hours, what's, you know, why is that happening? How can you prevent that? If you find that a lot of people, you know, working 40 hours a week and only able to bill 10 or 12, that's probably standard, but not ideal. So what are some of the issues that are preventing them from billing more? Where are we cutting hours? How can we help clients to pay faster? So the links that Libby talked about. And then what can we do to make it easier for them to pay? So sending the specific link to their email, to their text, to their phone, whatever that's going to be along those lines. Those become really helpful when it comes time to make sure you get paid, because that is probably the most important thing. You know, we do great work, but if there's no money, you can't afford to. So.
Right. I think, yeah, we're kind of wrapping up here on that when to iterate. That's a great thought from Alex there. It says, on our end, we find that using the multiple time entries help because we can just log as we go and save at the end. I 100% agree with this. I know several law firms who kind of just keep that, I guess, window open in the background at all points in time. So as they're completing different tasks, they're going in and filling them. So at the end of the day, they're not filling in, you know, 10 tasks or 5 tasks or whatever that is, but they always have that window open. And I've heard of several customers doing that and have made that recommendation to others. And then, so it comes to, you know, when to iterate. As Jordan mentioned, you know, your processes are never going to be perfect because things are always going to change. They're going to alter. Technology is going to improve and change. I mean, a year ago, we weren't even talking about AI, and here we are all, you know, talking about incorporating it and utilizing it. So, you know, when to iterate is things, you know, when it doesn't work how you want. If you're finding that there are maybe some bottlenecks in your process. We've had several customers even use tags that give phases of different processes. So when they pull a report at the end of the month, if there's a whole bunch of new clients or prospective clients stuck in phase 2, you know, that's your bottleneck. How do you make it a little bit better? How do you streamline it? How do you make it easier for either your staff or your customer to complete? You know, when there's new options, as Jordan mentioned, you know, we want to be very innovative when it comes to your practice management solution. So we're always looking for fun, new, interesting ways to make things better for you. We listen to our customers all the time. We hear all of your recommendations. We add those in. We try and make various updates monthly. You should be seeing those updates. You'll get notifications kind of within PracticePanther as well. We even have some webinars where we talk about these new options. So do keep a look on your inbox for when these new options are coming up, but typically around, you know, the end of the month or when we'll start seeing new options or features or updates and things like that. And then also when someone has a good idea, you know, there might be someone who is handling the calling of you know, taking that intake call, and they have a really great idea on how to improve something. You know, listen to them. They're working in it every day. It doesn't mean that you have to incorporate it, but it's a really great chance for you to kind of listen to your team, get their buy-in, you know, get their help, because if they're here to help you build the processes, they're going to feel confident in helping you make sure those processes are done correctly.
One thing we had at this point, probably 4 years ago, it was pre-COVID. The person at my front desk realized they were entering our address like 30 times a day on all the certified letters and all the mail and all that stuff. It's like, hey, can we just get a stamp? And oh my God, at this point, that stamp has probably saved like 15 to 20 hours of writing our address over and over again. It's crazy.
Right. And for what, $10 for a stamp? I mean, probably.
Oh, so worth it. We bought everybody a stamp. It was so worth it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never would have thought about it because I don't address our mail, for better or worse.
Yeah. Well, and I've even had, on the bankruptcy customers that we've had, they were having a hard time really collecting all the documents. I know there is a ton of documents that you need to collect from new clients when it comes to bankruptcy. So they even talked about sending their client like a checklist in the client portal, kind of so they can follow along just as the attorney and the staffers are following along. So they might have some really great ideas. Be willing to ask them. If you haven't heard of a good idea, maybe once a month or once a quarter, hey, is there some place that we can improve this? Because they might have some really great ideas.
And consider cutting things out. So what are we doing that's working well? What are we not doing we should be doing? What are we doing that we could stop doing? What's not making a difference?
Yeah. And then just when a certain amount of time passes, whether it's 6 months in, maybe it's once a year you put on your calendar just to make sure everything is moving along smoothly. If it is great, just keep doing what you're doing, but maybe you'll find a way that you can maybe tweak something, make something automated, change something. But yeah, when a certain amount of time passes, it's great. And also kind of when you hear a certain amount of complaints, probably coming from your clients, but maybe even from your staffers, if it takes too long to get something done, or there are too many steps, again, as Jordan mentioned, how can you remove maybe some of those steps?
And those complaints might be from staff members, it's too complicated, from clients, they don't like it, from the court. If you've got a workflow to get a motion heard and you find the JA rejecting the motion request because you're not filling out a form properly, maybe you need to update the system to check for the individual courtroom procedures, to download the judge's form, whatever that looks like along those lines.
Absolutely. And then that kind of really wraps up our conversation today. I know we've gone a little bit past time, so I really appreciate everybody staying with us. One thing I wanted to drop in the chat here is a link to Jordan's newsletter. So Jordan, I didn't know if you want to take a quick moment and talk about that.
Sure. I send a newsletter every Friday. There's about 2,000, 2,500 people that get it. And really, it's like what we're talking about here. How do you as a law firm owner build better systems, make better decisions, live a better life? And so if you're interested in this kind of stuff in a hopefully you find it funny manner, make a lot of references to Batman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Star Wars, whatnot, I'd love for you to sign up and join us. I'm happy to stay for questions. I know we've got 2 or 3 we haven't answered yet as well, Libby. So I want to make sure, again, thank you to everybody who spent this specific time with us. We want to make sure we get your questions answered because you are here live, not just watching the replay.
Absolutely. And just a quick thing, just stressing the importance of really taking the time after this webinar, book some time in your calendar. If you don't already have your processes written down, take 20 minutes, take an hour, take 20 minutes every couple of weeks, really find time, build it within your calendar, incorporate your team, let them be part of this journey. There's a lot of benefits when you really kind of focus in on your processes. So thank you so much for joining. And then let me get up here.
So do we have time to take the questions that are
yeah.
Okay. So Dee Unger asks, is there a way in PracticePanther to code billing entries, i.e. entering TC in the billing entry is telephone conference with, and they just fill in the name?
That is, again, something as we get into deep kind of questions on PracticePanther, we can kind of pull in some practice management consultants. I'll make sure some people get in touch with you because I want to make sure that I'm saying the exact thing. So Dee, I'll make sure and get that question answered to you before the end of the day.
And Dee, I'll tell you, we figured that out with PracticePanther when we did family law, but that's 5 years ago now. So I don't know, maybe it's changed or we did some crazy workaround, but I know we did it at some point. Maria asks, can payment be requested not just via credit card, but also via e-check?
Yes, it can. You can absolutely do an e-check.
And then Lynn,
debits as well, just to make sure.
And then Lynn asks, and I swear I did not see this to potentially do another webinar with you, but We do need to use PracticePanther to do marketing and business development tasks. Is there a session that focuses on this topic? And I'm going to add wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So
absolutely. Well, maybe that it feels like it might be a nice follow-up webinar to what we've done today. And so, Lynn, I really appreciate any kind of suggestions like this. And so I would love to talk with Jordan, and maybe we can even get some panelists together and talk about different marketing and business development tasks and things like that.
all right, we've got 60 people still with us. So if there's any other questions, I'm good for a little bit longer, but obviously I know we've gone past the time.
Awesome. And I really appreciate kind of everybody joining us today. It's been a lot of fun just hearing on, what everybody is. And if you have, I know there are a couple people put in there what works for them, feel free to drop that in the chat as well. If there's something out there that you really like within your law firm, let us know what you're doing, and maybe kind of share tips and things like that as well.
All right, it's that time of the wedding. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Ooh, all right. Intake form consultation and like a new client consultation. Awesome.
And then automating marketing functions. Yeah, and look, same thing. Automating marketing functions is even more specific to what we talked about. You are automating a lot of the reminders so that you can actually be personable with the potential referral source, with the client, with whatever. So that's a great use of automation to get you in front of people, to be a human, instead of being like, oh, I need to go back and manually send 150 other emails and update 12 contracts and do this and do that. So great stuff.
Absolutely. And let's be honest, marketing doesn't help with those billable hours. So let's start automating some of those tasks.
Come on, Libby. Marketing is what makes the cases that you can bill on.
There you go. There you go. Any other recommendations too? Well, you always have access to me. You can, I'm on LinkedIn. Libby Funky Luff is kind of how my name is on LinkedIn, or Libby at joinparadigm.com. But I am sorry that you are having some problems with contacting support. We'll definitely take care of that. In the top right corner of when you log into PracticePanther, you'll see that support button. So I don't know if you are connecting there on more of a chat feature versus maybe an email, but I'll look into our system and kind of see what's going on there, Melissa.
Oh, can I, I'll take Celeste.
Yeah,
question.
what you got?
So is there a way to automate an email to clients to be sent out when a case is closed? Not specifically through PracticePanther, but if you use Zapier, you can use it. What I did was an easy one. When the status changed to closed, it then jumped over to Zapier to then put it into MailChimp, Gmail, whatever it is along those lines. You could potentially have a form trigger it to trigger some text follow-up or whatnot from there. It just depends upon exactly what you need.
Yeah, and I believe, are you you automate through Zapier and then MailChimp, Jordan, or are you utilizing a different?
So at
Or you use
now,
Automatics, I believe, maybe.
yeah, but I zap you all closing to my team to let them know the case is closed to do the follow-up in Lawmatics instead of MailChimp. But it'll work the same way, Celeste, as the status update of an open case to a closed case would be what would trigger what you need. All right.
Okay.
Would that newsletter be through PracticePanther? No, I send the newsletter through MailChimp or Lawmatics, depending upon the week. All right. Awesome, everybody. Thank you so much. Libby, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us and talking a little bit about your processes and what works for you. I always, love to hear from a practitioner who's in it every day. So it gives us a lot of really great insight and feedback. And thanks to everybody who asked a question. If we weren't able to kind of get around to those questions here on this call, I'll make sure and follow up so that way we can get you taken care of.
And you've got my email right there on the last spot, the last slide.
Absolutely. Well, enjoy the rest of your day and your week. I hope everybody has an amazing holiday weekend as well. Maybe you got a lot planned or maybe absolutely nothing planned, but I wish the best no matter what.